And we're back. I just wrapped up the stream for a recap on the first 6 days of Build Phase League play. And as soon as I did, the spoiler article came out. So here we go. Let's dive into spoilers. If I cough more, stumble over my words more, I apologize. I just talked for like an hour. All right. Crossover Volume 3 card preview, Death and a Dump Truck. I do actually sincerely like the name of this article. So, in the last spoiler, they gave us this terrain card, which I basically didn't have anything to say about because I don't understand what terrains are. I get the idea of, I want to tease something, but come on, man. This is the same as nothing. Until this. Okay, so here we go. We've added something called terrain to the Versus system. Here's how it works. Terrain, 2 to 4 players. Terrain is an important part of almost every combat, so we thought we would make some! ! Shuffle a set of 10 terrain and place them face down in a pile. Now that's interesting that they phrase it that way. Shuffle a set of 10 terrain. I'm assuming that's just a typo. It's supposed to say 10 terrain cards. I don't know. So you shuffle 10 terrain and place them in a pile. As of this issue, there's only one terrain. It's a city. So maybe each terrain is since we know this one's going to be a city, they'll be like jungle or forest or whatever. Whoa. So this is a new game mode that's introducing exactly one terrain. Guys, a 55 card expansion was not the place for all this. Okay, anyway. After players reveal their main characters during setup, but before they draw their hands, each player draws a terrain card and looks at it. Then the first player places their terrain with the rest of the players following in turn order. Each terrain will tell you which row it can be placed in. We suggest you turn it sideways in its row. Then each player draws their hands and mulligans as normal. I wonder why they want it turned sideways. Does that little bit make this card make any more sense? At the start of each player's turn, they draw a terrain card and place it. When the game leaves ultimate end, remove each of those terrains. So this card lets you get additional terrain cards into play. But how does it leave? All right, I guess we have to keep reading. Terrain either affects each character in a row or 1 or 2 characters in a row. Hold on. These look totally different. What? Oh, because this itself is not a terrain. It is a domain. Oh, okay. Hold on. So supposedly we get multiple game modes, but the Battle World game mode won't work without the terrain game mode. So, okay. Trying to... where were we? If the terrain affects an entire row, its modifiers apply to each character in that row this game. So for the whole game. A character can be affected by more than one terrain. If a terrain affects a specific amount of characters, during each player's formation step, they move the proper number of characters onto or out of that terrain. While a character is in the terrain, the modifiers apply to that character. So there's going to be 2 different types of terrains, one that affects a set number of characters and one that affects the whole row. And if it's a set number, you have to put the supporting character card on top of the terrain card, which is sideways in the row. Okay, I'm still with it. Characters in this type of terrain should be physically touching the terrain card. Okay, you can leave this type of terrain empty or partially full, since you're not required to put characters on it. Presumably there may be a terrain that says you're required, but just because it's there doesn't mean you have to use it. A character can't be moved in more than one terrain of this type, but could be affected by it an entire row. Okay, so if you have 2 terrains and they both have a limited number of characters that you can put on them, then one character can only be affected by one or the other. They have to be physically touching one or the other. They can't be touching both. But if you have two terrains and one of them is a whole row type of terrain and the other one is a specific number type of terrain, then you could have a character that's affected by two terrains. Okay. And there's more notes down here. So let's look at the cards and see if this makes construction site. So I know this has nothing to do with Versus, but just look at this art. So yes, Spider-Man has like his sticky finger power, but what are you sticking your fingers onto? His shirt? Is that guy's shirt gonna hold him from falling to the ground? This is like a Gwen Stacy level of saving here. I'll leave it at that. Placement. Either rows, one character. At the start of your main phase, put a +1 counter on the character here. Okay, cool. That's simple, easy to understand. Dump truck. Either of your rows, all characters. So this placement line, I wonder if that's considered a keyword. Anyway. Dump. If a character in this row would gain any -1 counters, put them here. Instead, truck. You may move this during your formation step. Interesting. So, I mean, that's definitely good. You can prevent an entire row from getting -1 counters. That's definitely a positive power. And you can move it. So depending upon your needs within the context of the game, maybe you need all your guys up front, maybe your guys in back row are more important. But you can't have it in both places. I guess if you have your entire board in either the front or the back row, you can just turn off your opponent's ability to use -1 counters. And that seems pretty good. Kind of an interesting color, right? Like, oh, we need a new type of card. But we've already used green, red, and blue and gray. What do we use? Baby vomit. We need baby vomit colored cards. I wonder if different terrains will have different colors. That would be confusing. I hope not. Okay, placement. This is a river. You can put it in your enemy's row. That's cool. And characters in this row get -2 attack while defending because they're all wet. Okay. Although you are not required to do so, we suggest when the dump truck has any -1 counters, you make a beep beep backing up noise and then lift the card to dump those counters out. Yes! We also suggest that when you put a +1 counter on a character at the construction site, you name the tool it represents. Some examples are hammer, drill, or French press. A lot of French presses at a construction site. You're just ha ha ha. Ha 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 ha. If you're already playing a Battle World game mode, you will need to have a city terrain set ready in case Ultimate End enters. Yeah, so Battle World isn't playable without terrain. These aren't really... Are they really two separate game modes if one is unplayable without the other? If a player is playing Grandmaster main character in a regular game, you will also need to have a shuffled pile of city terrains at the start of the game because of Ultimate End. Players can agree to draw 2 terrain cards or more during setup and choose the one they prefer. Oh, and we get another game mode. Okay. So before I get into story mode, I just want to take a minute to plant my flag on this hair that I can't seem to get behind my ear. I want to take a moment to plant my flag on Battle World and terrains. And so I think this comes down to opportunity costs. I am not negative about either of these game modes in general, and I am not negative about the idea of new and inventive ways to play at all. I think the game needs that stuff badly, and that formats shouldn't just be you get these teams and you don't get these teams, or you get cards that have this number on the card and you don't get cards that have the... That's too simple for formats. So the idea of doing an event where players have battle worlds active or terrains active or these other things, I think these are all positives, and I don't want to come down too heavily on those things. However, this is a box that says crossover on the label, and we have multiple years worth of evidence telling us what crossover means. Plus the word. In a comic book, if characters are crossing over, you get characters from the Fantastic arc, you get characters from the Spider-Man arc, you get characters from the Omega level arc, and then they're all together in one box. You have a crossover of characters. This whole new game mode thing would be much easier to get excited about if I didn't feel like the price of admission was giving up a crossover set this year. This is not a crossover set. It flat out is not what we have been led to believe crossover is meant to be. And I'm not even sure that it's a totally valid use of what is crossing over here? I guess in the story of Contest of Champions, you have a bunch of heroes that come together and cross. I don't know. I wish they would have just called this Game Pack 1 or Adventures 1, anything other than crossover. And then even if it came out during this crossover slot and the opportunity cost was the same, I still don't get improvement for any of these teams that need some help. And also historically, let's keep in mind the crossover sets have been awesome. Super impactful, really important, really fun cards that do crazy things. Dark Phoenix being a giant example. Maybe not awesome, but definitely impactful, and a huge card if you're kind of a spike player that wants to win games. Dust, the Coulson main character, the Captain America, just on and on and on. World is a madhouse. Like, there's so many good things in the crossover boxes, and this just doesn't scratch the same itch. So giving it the same label sets my expectations here and then delivers something over here. And even if this something is really good, you set my expectations here, and that leads to expectational debt and feelings of disappointment. And that's kind of where I'm at. Like, I really want to like this stuff. I really do. But I can't help but looking at each of these cards and going like, man, that could have been some help for the Sentinels. Man, that could have been one more Omega. Man, that could have been help for S.H.I.E.L.D. Man, that could have been help for... So, I do like the game modes. I just don't like the way they were rolled out. And I might have some more thoughts about that in the future, but I want to get to story mode. As far as how these game modes work, I think Terrain and Battle World are just a game mode. They have slightly different rules and slightly different types of cards for what they bring into play, but at their core, the gameplay loop is the same thing. You flip a card over and that card affects other cards, and that card can't be affected by in-game stuff. So it's basically like a machine that's in an untouchable zone of the game. Ultimately, how cool will this be? How competitive will this be? How kitchen table will this be? I can't answer any of that until I see the rest of the cards. In theory, I like the idea of it. I like the idea of being able to play a game of versus using familiar characters, but throwing a twist on it. My friends and I actually took the conditional cards from old versus in the Galactus thing, and they had a lot of this very same type of stuff where all characters get +1, characters draw an extra card or whatever, kind of basic, subtle, slight alterations to how the game is being played that affect everybody or affect specific players. And we've played in that kind of game environment before. I like it. I like that it's officially coming to this game. I think those are super positive things. So again, my stumbling block is I kind of wanted one thing and I kind of got another thing. And that's a little bit of a bummer, but I think once we see all of the battle worlds and all of the terrains and we actually get to play with them, I think there's going to be a lot of fun to be had there. I just kind of wish it, anyway, I don't want to keep repeating myself, and I do really want to get into story mode. So I'm going to put a button on that and let's move forward. So let's discuss the most ambitious new game mode, story mode. So let's look at this. Okay. Someone has been caught in the crossfire. Player A's main character is the killer. Part 1. Player A decides, did you go too far? Choose a supporting character in player B's KO pile. That character is dead for the rest of the story. Remove each copy of it from player B's deck before moving to part 2. Player B wins. You can't save everyone, same as above, but you choose the character. Okay, maybe I need to read the rules first because I don't really understand any of this. Part 2, Cold Dish. Salt in the wounds. Player B's main character starts part 3 with a wound. Player B wins. Violence doesn't solve anything. Your main character has violent in part 3. And finally, the final showdown. It's all flavor text. Okay, I'm gonna have to. don't know what to make of that exactly. So 2 players, this is going to tell a story. In story mode, players will play through a series of 3 games called parts. I immediately think this has competitive play applications, but let's see. Play through a series of 3 games called parts with the same decks, gaining an advantage for each game they win. And part 3 is winner take all. Setup. Choose a story mode card either randomly or by consulting the story complexity list below. Then choose a player to be player A. So if we wanted to do some kind of a competitive event where we were using these story cards, we would have to analyze whether player A or player B, like what the advantages are. Like there could be competitive advantage for this deck type if you're this type of player. I don't know. I'm just speculating. So we choose a story from least to most. Death of a loved one, epic quest, time traveler, galactic game, assassination plot. Editor's note. Ooh, I wonder what happens in these. In some stories, player A has an advantage. In some stories, player B has an advantage. You'll discover the best one for your matchup of player skill and deck strength. We suggest your first story mode with decks you have already built, but you might want to build decks especially for particular stories after you've tried them a few times. Player A always goes first in part 1, and the winner of each part goes first in the next part. And it's not, that doesn't say chooses, it says goes first. So after each part is over, simply follow the directions on the story mode card for whichever player wins, and that's it. There are 5 unique stories, and we have ideas for more. As an option, you could play a series of multiple stories in a storyline, play them in random order, or choose the order that tells the best story for you. The winner of part 3 of each story becomes player A for the next story. We hope you enjoyed these 2 new game modes. Can't wait for you to play them. It's going to be boss. And boss is capitalized. So maybe there's some kind of raid mode adjacent type of something. This is cool. I like the idea of giving us an organized way to do best of 3s with a little twist on it. This feels real kitchen table, given that we know that there's going to be imbalances between player A and player B. I do think there are competitive applications, but if you're signing up for an event where all of your rounds are best of 3, that's going to be a long day or a long event. I mean, if we think back at Quarantine Cup, excuse me, I had individual games in Quarantine Cup that lasted over an hour. So if it was a best of 3, oof. So, okay, now that we understand, now that I've read these rules, let me see if I can actually talk through this and come to some kind of analysis on this game mode. So let's say I'm player A. So I'm the killer. Did I go too far? So we play our game, and then at the end of the game, if I won the game, I get to remove a character and all the copies of it from your deck. If you win the game, you get to do the same to my deck. That could be devastating if it's a key character in the KO pile. So if you know that this is a thing, maybe you hold back in game 1 and try not to play. If you think you're going to lose, just, okay, let's move on to game 2 before you put that key character in the KO pile. So there could be some strategy. There could be some gamesmanship there. Part 2. So this one's kind of a little bit more simple. So if I win game 2, you start game 3 with a wound. And if you win game 2, then your main character gets violent in part 3. So those definitely are not totally equivalent powers, but it could be that I removed an important character from your deck after game 1, and then you get to start game 2 with the ability to really smash my board up because your main character is violent. And then the final showdown, just I win or you win, whatever. So there are certainly ways that you could build your deck around this type of thing. Would this be better in a competitive setting than just playing a best of 3 with normal decks? Probably not. I don't think this is going to be well suited to like a whole day. Like, you're not going to want to play 9 rounds of Swiss in this kind of format, especially we don't know what the other story modes do. Just the time of 9 rounds best of 3, pretty rough. but this could be like a lot of fun on a Friday night hanging out with your crew. Just everybody brings whatever deck. Maybe you have some deck building rules. Battle Royale format actually would be made quite a bit more interesting by this. Like, I don't think you can have an over specialized event, or no, sorry, an over specialized deck and play into this because of how this is going to interact. I don't feel like this is very helpful or insightful analysis. I'm just, this seems like the sort of thing you do for fun in a low stakes environment. I would be interested. I think if we want to do this as a competitive environment, it would be each round. So like round 1, all players play with this storyline. Round 2, all players play with the different, and it wouldn't be a random storyline each round, because that would just be a little bit too random maybe, but we don't know what the other ones do. So maybe if they're all roughly on this power level, given here that this is the least complicated one, we have to assume that assassination plot there's going to be a lot more going on. How does that fit into people playing seriously? I don't know if it does. As far as the kitchen table crowd, this is going to be great. This is going to be a lot of fun. Just bring whatever deck you have, doesn't matter. We're going to get a new experience with cards we've already put together doing these wild story modes. I think the idea of suggesting that we play what they call it, a storyline, is maybe ambitious. I can't think of too many game nights outside of hardcore tournament testing where my group has churned through multiple best of threes. The idea that we're going to do 15 games potentially with these weird rules, that might be an ambitious suggestion. Maybe if we all are playing with low hit point main characters. So out of the 3 game modes, well, the 2.5 game modes, I definitely think I like story mode as a concept better if the criteria is game mode, like changing how the game is played. Now, I do think it's still a valid critique of story mode that it just doesn't quite do enough. My criticism last week, the disappointment I felt last week in learning what Battle World was, I was trying to scroll up to Battle World, but it's not here, in learning what Battle World was, hinged largely on the fact that when they said new mode, I wanted something that didn't just nibble around the edges. I wanted something that was legitimately altering the game in as fundamental way as game formats do, where the card pool is changed and that changes the meta and that changes everything about your analysis of the game, even though it doesn't change core rules. You know, Big Apple Battles does not change the core rules of the game, but it does change how the games are going to work because different cards are available, different cards aren't available, etc. Battle World feels even less impactful than a game format based on the ones we've seen so far. Admittedly, there could be some really crazy game warping experiences in both the Battle World and Terrain deck. And I think my sort of critique of Battle World applies to Terrain as well. Yes, this is cool. I think this is going to be fun. I think it's interesting. I like that Danny and Ben are willing to go outside of the realm of just giving us more cards that kind of do the same thing, like more red cards, more blue cards. Yes, the supporting characters have gotten crazier abilities over the years, but a supporting character, at the end of the day, is a supporting character. Battle Worlds and Terrains are not a new supporting character. They're not a different kind of plot twist, like, say, Might Makes Right is a different kind of plot twist. But I think the difference between Shock to the System and Might Makes Right in terms of how they function is almost negligible. This one needs a location, so it's kind of like a superpower. This one doesn't. Battle Worlds and Terrains feel like they bring almost a negligible difference to the overall feel of the game. Yes, they will impact outcomes. Yes, they will impact board states. Yes, they will impact game flow and choice of lines and all of that. But so do the supporting characters in your opponent's deck. And I personally was hoping a new game mode was going to go a little bit further, be a little bit more crazy. And again, caveat, giant asterisk, if other terrains and other battle worlds are more impactful than the ones that they've shown us, my analysis of this game modes could change. So I'm open to that possibility. I'm not saying I fully understand everything that's coming at us, but given what we've seen, I think this is a little tepid. The game modes are a little bit anemic. I am going to play with them. I do think they're going to be fun. I was just hoping for more. And I think part of it is they opted to put this into a 55 card set. I don't think this should be in a 55 card set. I think the fact that we're only getting one terrain, if you want to introduce this as a new mode, give us 2 terrain decks, give us 3 terrain decks. I think this should have been a 200 card expansion. I cannot comprehend why they put this into a small box and then called that small box something that already had an established definition. That kind of sucks. Story mode, on the other hand, I like better. I think this, for one, it encourages us to play best of 3s, which is something that has not really been our tournament formatting has been best of 1 since the beginning outside of top 8. So there's not a whole lot of best of 3 stuff that happens. Local events tend to mirror whatever the higher level events are doing, which again primarily is best of 1. Most of us play versus in a best of 1 way, so this incentivizes playing best of 3, and it adds some little, again, kind of nibbling around the edges changes. Well, okay, this first one admittedly is not nibbling around the edges. Being able to, between games 1 and 2, wipe an entire character slot out of my deck is not nibbling around the edges. That's good. That's just straight up that's going to be game changing. But is it game changing in like a positive way? When I say it's good, I mean it's impactful. But is it good for the game? Dark Phoenix is impactful via taking things away, and I don't know that that's good for the game. So I'm not sure, like, if they all play this way where you just get to kind of break 1 drop in your opponent's deck going into game 2. But I have faith that these story modes are not going to have... I suspect we don't see any of these mechanics used on another story mode. I think every story mode is going to do its own thing. I think that's very likely. I like this. I like the idea of it. This one we know is the least complex one, which probably means it's going to be my least favorite once I see all of them. And my critique here is very similar to these, although slightly less sharp. I'd like to see this do more. I like the idea. I like what they're going for here. I do think these don't need to be cards. You could have posted all this on a website. This could have been an alternate format way back when, before featured formats, back before Thanos was banned. Super Awesome Games posted 4 or 5 alternative formats on just their Facebook page, I think. Doesn't matter where they were posted exactly, but they just put them out. This could have been a Word doc that was shared with the community for free instead of getting it printed on a 2x0.5 by 3.5 piece of cardboard. And while I don't mind paying for it, again, opportunity cost, man. Like, this could have been a Sentinel wild card or something. So I like this game mode. I am not as excited about this crossover box as I wanted to be, unfortunately. And maybe some of that is the spoilers they chose to show us. Maybe some of the really exciting stuff is still in the box, and once I get the box in my hands and play with it, I'm gonna sing a different tune and go, oh man, I was wrong about the nibbling around the edges critique. I don't know at this point. We will see. Out of the game modes, I'm most excited about story mode. I just see this battle world terrain thing being a fun distract. Honestly, I don't know how many times it's going to get played. It doesn't seem like a super durable, replayable thing. But again, I haven't played it, so I guess I'm going around and around. All in all, I am really excited about Maestro and a couple of the other actual character cards. And yeah, there is still the boss battle, which we don't know anything about. And given the way this is phrased, I don't know if we're going to get another spoiler, because generally if there's a spoiler article, another one coming, they say at the bottom, we'll see you next week or whatever. And this one just says when it's going to hit stores. Let me double check myself. Yeah, this one just says when it's going to hit stores too. So maybe I'm misremembering that, and there will be another spoiler article before the set releases. But Also, it's the 9th, which means it's due out next Wednesday. So yeah, we're probably not going to see another spoiler unless they do a Friday spoiler for boss battles. And hopefully that's cool. Like, I'm going to get this set regardless. And I don't want to say any other whiny stuff. So I think I'm just going to leave it at that. All right, guys. This 2 live streams back to back today. I am out.